Good day, everyone. My name is Anjulia J. Gutierrez. I'm from Section D, and I will be presenting my FMA 2, Evaluating Social Mobilization Programs, a framework based on 1 billion rising Philippines. So, for a little bit of context and program overview, since this FMA 2 is tied to my FMA 1 about 1 billion rising Philippines, 1 billion rising started as a global call to end violence against women, and in the Philippines, it's become a yearly wave of protest, performance, and people power. So, from dancing in the streets to demanding real change, 1 billion rising blends art and advocacy into one loud and collective voice. So it also directly contributes to the global push for SDG 5, uh, which is gender equality, and SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. So here I have a little bit of photos from 1 Billion Rising Philippines, which has been active in the Philippines since 2013. And every year they have these dance protests and all these talks that empower women and victims of domestic violence and violence against women. So here um, we have women of all of different ages, and they all come together to voice out their advocacy. So you might be asking, why should we even evaluate a movement like this? Well, social movements are meant to be messy sometimes. They're emotional, organic, and ever evolving. But that's exactly why having an evaluation framework matters. So by taking a closer look, we would understand what's working and what's not, and where our efforts are landing or falling flat. And here we can see how we can adapt in a shifting social and political climate, especially in the Philippines, where the political climate constantly changes, and people there's a lot of nuances about social issues. And as Stewart 1995 reminds us, evaluation checks if our strategies are both efficient and effective, and not just purely about passion for issues such as women empowerment. So, what does our framework cover? So, to make sense of something as dynamic as 1 billion rising, we can ground our evaluation into four main areas, which is monitoring, which is to check, are we on track? Evaluation, are we making a difference? Strategy, how are we mobilizing people and messages? And impact, how does it align with broader development goals? So we can think of it as a way to zoom in and out by tracking the tiny wins and the big picture overall. So here's a breakdown of the monitoring framework. So how do we track progress over time? So this is adapted from Stewart 1995. So level is, are we where we hope to be in this year's campaign cycle? Metrics is the number of organized events per region, attendance versus target. Timing. Our campaign milestones like planning, mobilization, and media push on track. The metric here is the timeline tracking tools, Gantt charts, campaign diaries. And for effectiveness, what are we achieving so far, and is it resonating? And for the metrics here is the social media shares slash comments, qualitative feedback, traditional media mentions, and partner involvement. Since movements such as 1 billion rising, they heavily utilized on websites and social media to get their messages across. So a good tip here is to use real-time dashboards or shared Google Sheets to help campaign teams track the program's progress together. And for the evaluation types, here what are the ways to assess change across the campaign life cycle. So this is adapted from the sixth training from 1996. Formative evaluation, which is before the social mobilization program. So um, our tools here is the focus group discussions with youth and women and policy scans. So our aim is to understand what communities are concerned about and who they can help. And for the ongoing evaluation, which is during the social mobility program, the tools here is the feedback forms at events, mobile polls, hashtag performance tracking. And the aim here is to gauge if the message is landing or if mid campaign pivots are needed. And for the summative evaluation, which is after the SOCMOB program, the tools here are the pre/post surveys, in-depth interviews with participants, and partner feedback sessions. So our aim here is to measure shifts in knowledge, attitudes, or even local policy actions. So a good thing to remember here is that progress doesn't have to be legislative. Sometimes it can be a teenage girl saying, "Now I know what consent means." For the six component strategies, so here we can anchor each strategy with an evaluation method. So for advocacy slash IEC, we can track media coverage reach, social engagement, community awareness, and through surveys. And for community organizing, we can document the growth of local chapters or volunteer groups over time, especially with 1 Billion Rising, which is mostly based in Marikina, but it also branches out to different regions in the Philippines, such as Cebu and Bicol. Training slash capability building uses pre slash post tests, gathering testimonials from trainees or peer evaluations from trainers and participants. And we have alliance building slash networking. So this to monitor number and strength of new partnerships formed. Monitoring and evaluation ensures data collection happens before, during, and after campaigns. And for feedback mechanisms, it's to use anonymous online feedback forms, reflection circles, or open mic debriefs. Since 1 Billion Rising's open mics can have very heavy topics about violence against women and gender discrimination, open mic debriefs can be a good way to get feedback from the participants. For suggested evaluation tools, we can use simple tools to capture real impact, such as Google Forms or Kobo Toolbox. For the community surveys, um, it's best to have it translated to localized language depending on the region or the area. WhatsApp or Viber groups, pulse checks via polls or voice notes, video diaries. We can invite participants to share their reflections via short clips. Story mapping is document testimonials or changes in local narratives. And hashtag tracker, where we can use tools like brand mentions or meta analytics to track conversation volume around the 1 Billion Rising programs. So, where does this all connect? Ultimately, it connects with the social development goals. Movements like 1 Billion Rising don't exist in isolation. They feed into and draw strength from the social development goals, especially social development goal number 5, from raising awareness to pushing for gender responsive policies. We can achieve gender equality. And for SDG 16, by creating platforms where marginalized voices are heard and institutions are held accountable. So when you evaluate well, you can see how the local and the global are deeply linked. So with a global movement such as 1 Billion Rising, um, it can have a lasting impact on the Philippines through thorough evaluation and monitoring. So here we have instances where 1 billion rising uh, ties in with the government and local institutions such as advocacy groups and even the Supreme Court of the Philippines in Manila. So at the end of the day, numbers matter, but so do stories, especially when it comes to programs such as 1 Billion Rising. Sometimes the most powerful indicator isn't a metric, but it can be something like a woman saying, "For the first time, I felt seen." So evaluation can definitely be human. It can be qualitative. Um, this can happen by collecting short video stories from participants and survivors, using anonymous voice notes for those who want to share but want to remain anonymous, um, and by creating safe spaces for reflection, such as seminars and talks and open mics. It's in these stories where we see whether the messages not only reaches people, but the people are moved by them. So this is where we see the real impact of the program is when we listen to what people have to say about it instead of purely measuring analytics and engagement. So here are my references, and thank you very much for listening.